American Top 40.
We're counting down the hits the way they're ranked on Billboard's national charts. And now an AT40 special by one of the world's all-time great singing acts. A vocal group that began during the Roaring 20s and is still working today full-time. Their first hit record was Tiger Rag back in 1929, the year Wall Street laid an egg. And their latest hit single was just 3 years ago. They were four brothers when they started out, and they'd become big international stars by 1936. That was the year the oldest, John Jr., died. Well, John Sr. took his place, quitting his job as a barber, and he sang with his sons for the next 18 years until he retired at age 72. Today, after 45 years in the business, they're still one of the top-drawing nightclub acts in the world, and they're still hitting the record charts. Their latest big single is an AT40 special from 1968. Here are Herbert, Donald, and Harry, the Mills Brothers.
Cab driver, drive by Mary's place. Driver, better take me home.
The first hit, 1929, and from 1968, this hit called Cab Driver by the Mills Brothers.
American Top 40.
Well, now let's answer that letter from our listener in Louisiana. It's from Bill Jeffries, who lives in Lake Charles, and he says he's heard me talk about the oldest solo artists who've hit the charts, but he wants to know who was the oldest group in age to make the top 40 during the rock era. Well, Bill, you're asking about a group of singing brothers who had their first hit record nearly a half-century ago with a song called Tiger Rag. They're the Mills Brothers, and they're still active. And the last time they made the charts was just a few years ago, 1968. They had a song called Cab Driver, went to number 23. Herbert Mills was then 55 years old. Brother Harry was 54. And the youngest in the family, Donald, was 52. Which made them the rock era's oldest group to hit the top 40. Thanks for sending in the question. Now on AT40, let's answer that question about top 10 staying power. Scott Ilton of Eagle Point, Oregon writes, Dear Casey, I've been wondering, what song stayed in the top 10 the longest ever? Well, Scott, that record-setting song was sung by a vocal group who began their fantastic career in the Roaring 20s and are still working today. And the youngest member of this amazing group is now 64 years old. Their first hit record was Tiger Rag, back in 1929 before the charts began. And their latest hit single was on the chart as recently as 1968, a song called Cab Driver. This fabulous singing group are the Mills Brothers. Well, their biggest hit single came onto the charts in August 1943, climbed into the top 10, and stayed there for 30 consecutive weeks. 12 of those weeks at number 1. The longest time in the top 10 of any single in chart history. The title? Paper Doll by the immortal Mills Brothers.
American Top 40.
I'm Casey Kasem, and superlatives are where it's at this week on American Top 40. We've opened up the AT40 Book of Records, and we're going through it page by page, record by record. You know, there have been a lot of giant songs in recent years, but to find the biggest pop single in chart history, we gotta go way back to the early years of the Billboard chart. It was back in 1943 that the biggest song to ever hit the pop chart climbed into the top 10, where it spent an incredible 30 weeks, 12 of those weeks at number 1. And that's a record that nobody has been able to touch in the past 37 years. Not Elvis, not the Beatles. Nobody. And here's that song from 1943, Paper Doll by the Mills Brothers.
I'm gonna buy a paper doll that I can call my own. Real live girl.
From 1943, that's the Mills Brothers with Paper Doll. And, not counting Bing Crosby's White Christmas with its multiple chart appearances every holiday season, Paper Doll by the Mills Brothers is the biggest hit single in the history of the charts. And, for the time being, that closes our AT40 Book of Records.
The hits go coast to coast.